Hello friends, happy Sunday. Patrick here, covering The Psychology of Totalitarianism by Matthias, Desmet. Just wanted to give you a quick, short update today. I hope you're having a great Sunday. I went out to church this morning. I tried to visit a new church and see how that went. That was, interesting, but I don't want to talk about that here. I want to talk about chapter called Conspiracy and Ideology, and that is chapter 8. Now, the author does something very interesting in this book because he speaks against conspiracy theory thinking. And what he says is, these mass formations that have happened throughout history, Stalinism, Nazism, and COVID hysteria, he shows us the parallels between all three, but he talks about that they're not conspiracies. He says that they are ideological based movements. They're based on an ideology that gets adopted, and then the mass of the people act in concert. They act as one organism, similar to starlings. When you see them all of a sudden reach a critical mass in the sky and they start moving as one dynamic organism almost. They turn on an instant as like a cloud. You know, when you see the cloud of birds all moving in unison, he's saying this is how similar mass formations occur in the human population, where everybody is moving in concert to the same tune. And apparently scientists don't know how starlings are able to do this. A school of fish, same thing, they just move as one huge organism. Anyway, it's funny because he does something where he kind of covers his own assets, so to speak. He covers his position by speaking against conspiracy theory. He says, well, it's not a conspiracy, it's just this mass formation that happened to have occurred spontaneously. Yet I don't believe he is 100% sincere. He's being slightly intellectually dishonest in his presentation, because he turns around and does a 180 and tells us that this is a conspiracy, because he says here, I just want to give you a couple of quick quotes. He says, it's well documented, whether in governments, the tobacco industry, or the pharmaceutical lobby, there is bribery, manipulation, and fraud. Whoever doesn't participate in these practices can hardly remain at the top. And again, just moving down a little bit, this is very interesting what he says here. I want to just show something to you that is very profound. He said, the Holocaust came about through a mind-boggling process of mass formation that blinded both the perpetrators and the victims. Okay, I'm going to paraphrase a little bit here. Then, now look at how he reverses himself. He says, oh, there's no conspiracy about COVID. It's just a mass formation that occurred because all these elements came together at the right time. But listen to what he says. He says, however, at a certain level, speaking about the Holocaust, there was also an intentional plan which systematically aimed to optimize racial purity through sterilization and the elimination of all impure elements. There were approximately 5 people who neatly and systematically prepared the entire Holocaust destruction apparatus, and they managed to make all the rest of the system cooperate with it in total blindness for a long time. And those who did see what was going on, namely that the concentration camps were in fact extermination camps, were accused of being conspiracy theorists. Can you imagine? 5 people directed the entire concentration camp program. We could probably figure out who they were. Hitler, of course, and a couple of these other guys, but I'm not a World War II historian, so I don't know them off the top of my head. But 5 people. Imagine. The same thing is happening today. He says that the COVID situation is not a conspiracy, yet could we pick out 5 people today that we can think of that are directing all the traffic and everyone follows along? It's similar in the education system. He talks about that during the Holocaust, they recruited civic leaders who were Jewish. They recruited the people who were in charge of their communities to implement their plan. And they went along with their plan simply because it was directed from an authority. And look what's happening today in our school system. The driving force that is coming from the prince of this world, who he doesn't identify in the book, are directing the ideology, and they're recruiting the principals of the school to go ahead and destroy the children, to tell them that mathematics is not important and learning English literature is not important, learning geography is not important. Those things are not important. But switching your gender because you identify with this individual that they brought in, and they bring in a dysfunctional, perverted drag queen to disrupt the mind of the children, and they say, follow this because this is more important, this is better. And they tell the children, you're not a girl, you're a boy, and you can change into that. And then they tell the boys, you're not boys, you're women, you're girls. And they recruit the teachers to implement the ideology which is being directed by a very few number of people. And similar it is with the COVID circumstances that we've seen. A very few number of people who benefit greatly and are driven by their ideological goals for reducing the world's population are directing huge numbers of people that trickles down to the masses. And you have the masses moving in concert to the puppet masters who direct what's going on. If that isn't a conspiracy, then what is? The concentration camp program was a conspiracy by his own admission. But the concept of the chapter is him backtracking and saying, oh no, it's not a conspiracy, it's a mass formation. It's not a conspiracy, it's a ideological adoption of a large number of people because of unusual contributing circumstances that happen to align. Not only that, he leaves out, as I mentioned earlier, any spiritual dimension of the circumstances of what's happening in the world today and what happened in the world in the past. What happened during Stalinism when it started to devour itself and more people were considered to be enemies of the state, and that category kept growing and growing and growing, and eventually it just became a situation where they had quotas, where they had to go out and arrest random people and send them to the gulags. They started with specific categories of people. Well, these are intellectuals, so they're speaking against the government. And these people have to go because they have too much wealth. And then these people have to go because they don't have enough wealth. So they got rid of rich people. They got rid of the extremely poor people. They got rid of the mentally infirm. Eventually, they were getting rid of, under Nazism, they were getting rid of anybody that had a heart condition. They were getting rid of anybody that had any kind of physical condition. So that category of the enemies of the state kept expanding and expanding. And it's horrific to see. So I found it very, very interesting to see that in this particular chapter that I've reached, chapter 8, so I'm coming up on chapter 9, which is section 3. And I've only got another, how am I doing here? Let's take a quick look where I'm at in the book. Is page 150, and we go all the way to 190. So I've only got 40 pages left to go. But again, I have to confess that I believe he's being slightly intellectually dishonest, but he's doing it for a purpose. Because as I mentioned, he's covering his own basis by saying, oh, I'm not a conspiracy theory. However, this is this. You see what I'm saying, what he's doing? You basically have to read between the lines of what he's explaining to the reader. So it's kind of like, let the reader be aware of what he's actually explaining. But still absolutely excellent, lucid, clear thinking writing by this author who, don't forget, has been an inspiration for people like McCullough, an inspiration for the speech that Robert Malone gave on the Joe Rogan podcast. and has inspired a lot of people today who have escaped from this mass formation. They've escaped. And I'll leave you with one other thing that happened recently. I was with some friends the other day, and we were having a casual conversation, and what came up in the conversation naturally arose was people were saying, you know, this thing, it doesn't seem to be doing anything, because each of us knew people who had multiple of these, and they still got sick. And so we said, it's, you know, it polarized the discussion, because the people that were willing to speak openly and frankly were, you know, saying things as they were. But the people that weren't able to comment started to feel very uncomfortable. They experienced cognitive dissonance, and they were like, I think I have to get out of here, because they realized things aren't as they appear. They had been caught in the mass formation, and to escape out of the mass formation, it was very uncomfortable for them to do that. And so I thought that was quite profound to see that in front of my own eyes happening in a public conversation. And so just wanted to give that quick update for you. I'm getting through the book. I've got another 40 pages to go, and I'll try and give you a synopsis when I finish. I'm going to definitely have to read this more than once, and the second time that I go through it, I'll be taking notes. This time, because of my circumstances, I was not taking notes as I was reading, and so I'm just basically going from memory. But very powerful statements within it, very eye-opening, very sobering, very enlightening. I definitely recommend it if you can get your hands on a copy, maybe from the library, or you can order it on Amazon, but it's a little pricey off Amazon. I think it cost me like $35 with shipping included or something. I don't know, but I guess it's worth it. So that's that. I'm just going to enjoy the rest of today. I'm going to try and get through the book, hopefully within the next day or two, and then I'll give you an update on that. I hope you're having a fantastic Sunday. If you have any comments about what you see that's going on in the world today and where you think things are going, I'd be happy to hear from you. I think that we are making headway. I think the people that are awake and willing to address things critically and willing to discuss things openly and honestly are gaining in strength. The difference between the three major comparisons that he makes in this book, he compares Nazism, Stalinism, and the scamdemic. The difference today is our access to communication that they didn't have back then. They had the mainstream media, which is still being used today to promote the agenda of these puppet masters. They had the same mainstream media back then. They controlled the national media. They silenced opposition, just as they're doing today. But today, we have a little bit of a different situation, is that we have access to independent media. And that's what social media is. Social media is independent media. So you're able to have people like this write a book and get it distributed. That didn't happen during World War II. That didn't happen at that time. Everybody was along for the ride. They were kept in the dark. The few dissenting voices were quickly eliminated and silenced. Whereas today, we have the opportunity of what we call viral activity, viral video. When something gets shared organically, something gets shared not because it's being pushed by the mainstream media, even though they still have the strongest hand. But we have the opportunity where we have an organic, viral truth that can be shared and propagated through that overcomes the influence of the controlled media. The controlled media has been the enemy of the people since it came into existence, since prior to World War II. But World War II, they really used it to their advantage. The press and the newspapers that were available to the people at the time, they controlled the narrative completely. Whereas today there are cracks in that controlling mechanism. And so we are lucky today, because if we didn't have that, we would be at the mercy of those, to give the example he uses in the book, those 5 people, so to speak, right? Those 5 people. And that, if that is not a conspiracy, I don't know what is. And it gets propagated through, through these different channels, and it can apply to a lot of different things. It can apply to the medical industry. It can apply to the political landscape. It can apply to our public school system. It can certainly apply to the college and university level academic environment, which is controlled, and the agenda is being perpetrated through those avenues. And so what's going to happen is that independent post-secondary education is going to start to become much more prevalent. Take a look at Michael Saylor's education academy that he has started as a grassroots free education movement, that people can walk away from the controlled academic environment and say, oh, you know what? This is just as good an education. It's independent and it's free from this ideological influence that is trying to mold and conform people into adopting the atheistic viewpoint that wants to dramatically reduce the population of the world. If you're going to go from 7 billion people down to 500 million, how do you think that's going to happen? That's a big goal they've set for themselves, and I don't believe they're going to succeed, because the difference between today and the time of the Holocaust, the difference between today and the time of Stalinism, is that today we have technology on our side. Each person hanging on to something that can allow them to communicate globally and share truth when they find it, when they see it, and they say, hey, wait a minute here, the king is not wearing any clothes. Share that with my friend and let him know this is not right what they're doing. And that can rescue our society from the lies that are trying to be pulled over people's eyes, just like they have all throughout history. It's not the first time that we've been tried to be lied to and controlled and destroyed. They tried to do it in Nazi Germany, they tried to do it in Stalinist Russia, and they're trying to do it today, but they're not going to succeed. God is still in control, he's still on the throne, and he loves each and every one of us. I pray you have a blessed Sunday. I thank you so much for watching. I love you very much. Have a blessed Sunday, and share truth wherever you see it, wherever you find it. Sometimes we're going to make mistakes and be wrong, but that doesn't mean we're not going to stop trying to find and share the truth with those whom we love. Thank you very much for watching. God bless you. Have a wonderful day. Hope to talk to you again soon. Take care. Bye-bye.